Hello, my name is Cynthia Dyer, and I am with Commander Robert Kiker, and we are here in Burnett, Texas, filming for the Library of Congress's Veteran History Project. And so, Commander Kiker, if you wouldn't mind, please state your full name and spell it for the record, please.
Okay, be glad to. Commander Robert Davis Kiker, RobertDaviskIker. Robert Davis Kiker.
Thank you. And could you tell us, please, a little bit about where you were born, when, and a little bit about your childhood?
Be glad to. I was born in Snyder, Texas, way out west Texas, and home was Colorado City, but I was born in Snyder because back in those days there were just a few doctors, so mom decided to have me in Snyder, Texas.
Okay.
So I've actually raised in Colorado City all my juvenile life. So
Okay. Did you have brothers and sisters? Or
no,
yes?
the reason I didn't have any brothers and sisters is I had a little bitty mom, and I was a big baby boy, and I guess I just did some damage.
Oh,
And so mom didn't have any more kids.
well.
I was a spoiled brat. So.
Well, good. Good for you. I like it.
Yeah, back in those days, they let her go 2 weeks longer than she's supposed to.
Oh,
She was a little woman, and I came out over 10 pounds.
wow.
Yeah. So
Yes, understood.
I did some damage.
Understood. Ooh, okay. Well, so how did you obviously were in the military, so as you were growing, did you have influences as far as the military, or what kind of brought you to the place where you wanted to join? Or did you want to join? Or how did that occur?
Well, I, in my younger life in high school, and then I wasn't aware much about the military, and but I guess you would say that it was later in college that I decided that the military was something I wanted to pursue because I wanted to get a commission as an officer because at that time they had the draft, and I was number one number one priority was to get my college education, and but number two was to not be drafted. And so anyway, I went and got my engineering degree at Texas Tech, and I still had a military obligation. But let me back up. I did join the ROTC at Texas Tech,
Oh,
and I did that because if you graduated and you stayed in the ROTC, you got a commission as a commissioned officer. And back then, that's the way you wanted to go in the military. So I did go in the Air Force ROTC at Texas Tech, and I learned to love the military in the ROTC. So then, after I got my degree from Tech, uh, at the time, I had a wife and a baby on the way. And so I was getting my engineering degree, but I still had a military obligation. There was no way around it. You had a military obligation. Well, I didn't want to go in as a private, and so I had the degree. So I just happened to be blessed with a good friend that his dad was in the Navy, and we were college mates, and he'd talked to his dad, and his dad talked to me and said, Bob, why don't you think about going to Navy and go OCS? And that was a blessing in disguise. And so that's what I did. I got my college degree from Tech in August of 1960, August the 16th. I was also at the OCS for the Navy in Rhode Island. I I didn't get to go to my graduation ceremony at Tech. I was already I was already in the recruit at OCS in Rhode Island.
Wow.
Yeah, things went quick. Things really went quick, and it was a blessing in disguise too.
Was it?
There wasn't any time to worry about anything. My, my number one priority was to support my family, and I wanted, but I also wanted the assurance that came from being in the military. That was a lot of pluses. So yeah, I went to OCS in August, and then graduated in December and got my commission as an ensign in the United States Navy. And my wife, of 7.5 months pregnant, was at my ceremony in Rhode Island.
Oh. Oh.
Yeah, yeah. And anyway, so that was the start of the Navy career, and what a blessing it was! What a decision that I made to do that, because it just guided me for the rest of my life. Being and I was just so blessed to be to have that opportunity. And of course, when you're 23 years old, you can do anything. And so, anyway, we got my commission in December the 16th and reported to duty aboard ship in San Diego, California. So,
Did your family move to, or where was your wife and
no, my
newborn?
wife stayed at home in West Texas.
Okay.
Stayed with her parents.
Gotcha.
Stayed with her parents because she was, and then yeah. And when I went first to the Navy in December, right after getting my commission,
Mm-hmm.
she stayed in West Texas,
Okay.
and a little town called Meta, Texas, which is just south out of Lubbock.
Okay.
And anyway, her parents were farmers there, and so she stayed there.
Mm-hmm.
And then the first break I got in the middle of January, I drove home because she was supposed to have the baby.
Yes.
I drove home and I could only stay 5 days, I believe it was. I had to get back to the Navy, and yeah, and she still didn't have the baby.
Oh no.
So back to San Diego, California. 3 days later, they called me out at 2 o'clock in the morning aboard ship. They called me out to the. You have a telephone call, and it was. Yeah, she called and said, "You got a baby girl."
Oh, congrats.
Yeah, that was. Here I was, several thousand miles away, but what a blessing.
Yes.
Anyway, and then I was aboard the ship. It was an LST, and it was due to be decommissioned. So I stayed aboard it for. I can't remember the exact, but it was something like April and
Mm-hmm.
January to April, and then they took the ship and sent it over to Japan to be decommissioned, and they transferred me to another LST, the St. Clair County LST 1096, and anyway, but wife and Kim was the baby girl.
Mm-hmm.
They came out, and we were there temporarily for. It's about the end of June.
This
if I
is in
remember.
San Diego?
Yeah, and
Okay.
and I thought, well, yeah, about end of June. So, and I boarded another ship, another LST, the St. Clair, and we were due to go on a 9-month cruise out in the Pacific, and it was a very interesting cruise. But there were also other wives, officers' wives on the ship, and they had children, and so when we moved the ship, we had to go to Hawaii, to Pearl Harbor.
Mm-hmm.
And so the three wives with the kids, they all went to group together. They went to to Hawaii and got apartments there. Found an apartment complex, and so when we were in port, we had an apartment. And then when we went aboard ship, was gone out for several weeks at a time, the women would move into one apartment.
That makes sense.
And they had a real good relationship with the apartment manager and everything. So yeah, it was. So for several months at the beginning of my naval career, that was it. We were in and out, in and out. And what we were doing was a first for the United States Navy. We were putting in satellite stations in the Pacific Ocean for celestial navigation.
Really?
Yeah, it was the first. Those stations are still there to this day. Yeah, and we went to all the small islands in the Pacific Ocean and put in those navigation stations. We had as an LST, and it just anyway, we had a helicopter aboard, and we had the experts that were installing it. And what we would do on the little islands all out in the Pacific,
Mm-hmm.
we would just navigate around and around and around. We were their supply,
Okay.
and they would run the helicopter back and forth to the little island, put their installations in, and come back out, and we would just supply them.
I understand.
And then in this whole process, we were at sea. I never forget the first time we were at sea 89 straight days without going. Yeah, it was. We ended up and we finally got that little job done. But like I said, it was almost. It was started off as about 8.5 months, I think it was. Anyway, but the women, we got to see them a few times, and then back out to sea. And then we went back to home port, and and our wives and children joined us back, and we got an apartment and started over again. Huh?
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, that was the beginning of the Navy career. It was go 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 go. There wasn't any time to sit around and worry about anything. Of course, you're also young, you're tough, you're young, and you just. But the military helped us as young families. Helped us. They really, yeah. Yeah. It was. It was in a way you would look at it. It was like a big vacation, really. In a way, I mean, yeah, we were working, but aboard ship we wore shorts. I mean, we're by ourselves in the whole Pacific Ocean.
Wow.
And we had the professionals installing the navigation stations, but it was fun. It was fun.
Oh, that's goodness. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I imagine you made some good friends then.
Oh
some
yeah.
friendships along the
And
way.
then after that little trip, then we got back to normal Navy operations back in San Diego, where you would go out and do maneuvers ever so often, and you were in port about half the time, and you were at sea about the half time, and so you established your homestead or your apartment
Sure.
locally.
Sure. Can I ask you, what did you do? I mean, what is your specific job? What during this time? What were you doing? What did you train to
yeah,
do?
what my job was when I went aboard as a brand new ensign,
Mhm.
yeah, which is second lieutenant, same thing in the Army. So anyway, my job was to become a ship driver.
Okay.
That's what we were on the ship for, and there was about 12 of us officers on the ship. We had enlisted men of about, I can't remember exactly, but it was about 110.
Wow. Okay.
You know, the ship, the LST, was designed, it hauled big land equipment, tanks.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what a landing ship is,
Okay.
the LST.
Okay.
Part of the amphibious. Go into the islands, drop the door, the tanks come off. That's what we were.
Okay.
So we were but as naval officers, we were designed to support the radio communications, navigation, and some most of the technical stuff anyway, but become a ship driver. And so they had already seasoned officers aboard that had been there a year and a half or so.
Okay.
They became our instructors, and we would be called, there was an officer of the deck. He was called OOD, officer of the deck. And then as a young ensign, we were a JOOD, junior officer of the deck. And we stayed watches with them. There'd be an OOD and a JOD, 4 hour watches. Yeah, 4 hour watches, and you did 1 4 hour watch every 24 hours.
Did you ever have anybody come around? I mean, did you ever have other ships you encountered?
Oh yeah,
Oh,
oh yeah,
good.
oh
Okay.
yeah, oh yeah. So during the first part of your JOD,
Mm-hmm.
the OOD is to train you to become an OOD.
Sure.
And so there were 2 of you on watch, and he would give you assigned duties to help you learn to be a ship driver.
Gotcha.
You had to learn how to drive that ship. The commands to give the engine room, the commands to give the radar people, the commands to give the radio equipment. You had to learn all of that. You had to learn how to navigate. That included, back then we had radar for navigation. We had to learn to navigate on a map.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, and then we, of course, back then the electronics weren't what they are today.
Mm-hmm.
We had radar contact. About the maximum range we had was about 60 to 80 miles.
Oh.
So we still shot shooting stars at night for navigation on the maps.
What did you?
Yes, and so you had to learn to be a navigator. You had to learn how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were always blessed when we were progressing our track, what was the course, 250, 300, whatever. How close were we to what we were projecting? Then we'd come out at night, we'd shoot stars and get our location. If we weren't in radar range,
Mm-hmm.
or in the sun, you could shoot sun lines in the daytime. So you had to learn the old basic navigation.
What happens when there's clouds?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean.
That's a problem. That
Yes.
is a problem. Yeah. If you can't shoot the stars at night.
Right.
Now, there's a term that's used back then and still used today. We call it dead reckoning. Dead reckoning, and that has to do with navigation.
Mm-hmm.
You establish the course you're going on,
Mm-hmm.
and you plot that. You're also known. You're given the currents of the ocean, the winds, and there are ways of calculating what that course, what the correction should be. To maintain maybe 250, you have to steer at 255. But that's part of the whole learning of how to be a navigator. And so, and then you just hope like heck that when you did get radar contact that you were close. And it's amazing. It's amazing because, and if you look back at it, at the big Pacific Ocean, there are places where you can actually go 24 hours and longer without establishing radar contact with any land mass. The ocean's so big, so there are times when you will be going for 24 hours without physical contact of a known land position.
Wow. Sure.
So then you start you start. Come on, Lord, don't give us any clouds. We need contact. We need with the sun. We need contacts with the stars. Yeah, and
Sure.
but it was fun.
Now, did you go from the north hemisphere to the south hemisphere? Did you do the
We crossed
equator?
the equator a couple times.
Did you have the parties?
Yeah,
Did you?
yeah.
You want to talk about
No, well, yeah. It was very the party. The party on our one little ship was pretty small. Yeah, but yeah, and but it's amazing uh, that the intelligence that we did have was so good. It was so good that we and uh, and now today that they've got such a sophisticated navigation system that they don't do that anymore. They don't do that anymore. Maybe they do it for the fun, but
They would if those things
that,
went out. Went out. I mean, they'd have to.
yeah,
They'd have
this
to have it
this
as a
is old
backup.
time stuff. This is
Yeah.
old time stuff,
Sure.
and
Sure.
so that my first job in the active duty was aboard ship was, and I have to tell this experience because I don't know of many newborn ship drivers like me, an ensign in the Navy, had this experience.
Okay.
But usually, what happens after you're a JOD and you're trained by an OOD, he will go to the captain of the ship and he will say, like he would say, Bob, Captain, I think Bob's ready to be tested. And this is the way the Navy did it back then. So we were sitting in the harbor in San Francisco. We were at Treasure Island, uh, inside of the harbor with Treasure Island. And what it was, we were getting underway at 7 that morning. All the officers go to the wardroom at 5:30 in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
and we're sitting there. And Captain John Ward was down at the end, and I was down here. We were drinking coffee and eating our eggs, and he said, "Bob, today's your day. You take us out of San Francisco." Off, we were tied up at the pier. This was my day to be qualified from a JOD to an OOD. But of all places, San Francisco Bay, the current there is horrible. And that's the reason they have Alcatraz there.
Mm-hmm.
You can't swim away from Alcatraz.
Mm.
There's sharks, there's heavy current. And here's little old Bob on us tied up at Treasure Island, and I'm going to take a ship out of San Francisco Bay under the Golden Gate.
Ooh,
I did it.
They trusted you to do it. They knew you could do it.
But there's so many different commands people don't know about. You have to know what the wind's doing, what are you at a rising tide or lowering tide, how that ship is going to behave when you back off the pier. Because you're going to back off the pier and you're going to get steady here. Then you're going to pick and there's no such thing as a straight pathway. San Francisco, you have to go around, and then you go right by Alcatraz. Yeah, you go right by Alcatraz, and then what's the next big thing in San Francisco? When you pass Alcatraz,
the bridge.
the Golden Gate,
Bridge.
I got to drive under the Golden Gate.
Yay! That's thrilling.
And then we went on out, and what you do, we were San Diego, this is San Francisco, so you go on out till you get to the international waters, and then you turn south, turn left, and head south. So we got out to the turn, and I turned to south, and the captain came up and said, "Congratulations, you're an OOD." I said, go relax.
Oh, congrats!
That is
awesome.
That's one of the number one big achievements as a naval officer in the beginning.
Yay! Good.
To be a qualified officer of the deck of a ship, because that means the captain's going to sleep at night while you're driving the ship. You talk about growing you up in a hurry.
That's right.
Yeah, it was very. I was just so impressed. I mean, whoa.
Yes.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest early highlights of my active duty Navy career.
Sure.
Was being qualified. And then for the trip on home,
mm-hmm.
I had my own duty, my own 4 hours as a OOD, not a JOD. And they even had another younger officer who became my JOD.
Exactly.
And I don't know, all of a sudden that shift in responsibility it grows you up in a hurry.
You bet. You bet.
And I guess went on back to San Diego, and then the next big change in my active duty was was in it was in '62. This all of this activity was done in '61.
Mm-hmm.
In '62, and when you're in the Navy active duty, you're back then. I don't know exactly how they're doing it now, but I
Mm-hmm.
was in for a 4 year term,
Okay.
and then after 18 months, you're qualified to become a lieutenant JG. That's your first. If everything's okay, you're gonna get promoted in 18 months.
Okay.
You become a lieutenant JG,
What's a J?
lieutenant junior grade.
Junior grade. Okay.
That's the same thing as a first lieutenant in the Army. Okay,
Okay.
it's '06. I mean, excuse me, no. It's '02.
Okay.
You start off '01, '02, '03, '04.
Gotcha.
Anyway, it's the same thing in the Army as a first lieutenant. You have that after 18 months. And also in the Navy, they like for you, if you're going to spend a 4 year tour, 4 year tour, if you're going to spend a 4 year tour in the Navy, they like for you to split your tour. So after 18 months, 2 months, 24 months, then so they ask you what would you like to do your next 2 years. I was already a ship driver, and I said, well, I'd like to stay right around in the San Diego area, and I said, but and I'd like to stay in operations. Operations means communications and stuff like that. I didn't want to become a gunnery officer, or I'd rather stay in the communications. And so they said okay, and then they assigned me to Flotilla One, Amphibious Forces Flotilla One, under Commander of Amphibious Forces Pacific. In other words, Comfib Pac, which was the commander of all the amphibious forces in the Pacific Ocean.
Was that headquartered in Honolulu?
In San Diego.
In San Diego. Okay.
Yeah. And Flotilla One, which I was assigned to, was the landing ship flotilla of the Fib Pac.
Okay.
We had the landing ships. We had the LSTs, LSDs. We were the one that would carry the equipment.
Okay.
And so it was a big command right there on Coronado Island. And I was a communications officer for that command.
Wow.
That was a real, I really enjoyed that
Sounds
tour.
busy.
And guess what happened though? Yeah, you remember what happened in October of 2002? Remember what happened in October of 2002? There was a little country called Cuba that was giving us trouble.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, and anyway, what I was doing with Flotilla, since we go to sea sometimes, but not much. We were land based, but we would sometimes go on board ship just as more of a training or whatever. So I wanted to get my master's degree in math.
Uh-huh.
So I entered San Diego State.
Okay.
In the fall of '62.
Okay.
So I worked on my master's degree in math. When I went through engineering school, I always thought I'd like to be getting into math. So, one evening in October, I was in class that evening when two shore patrolmen came to the college class. Two shore patrolmen. I saw them walk in. They knocked and walked in. They were there to get me.
That's right.
And I thought, what? Where is Lieutenant Kiker? Yeah. Hello. Please come with us, sir. Okay. Went out to the classroom, and they said, you're to report to Confib Pack headquarters. We're in, we have a military problem and you with the Cuban. So you said you can go home, say, pack your stuff, pack stuff for at least 2 to 3 nights, and tell your wife you're going to the base. You'll be at the base. You will be able to contact her by phone. So, boom. It was all about the Cuban invasion.
Yes.
It turns out that CONFIBPAC was going to supply the amphibious forces and the Marines.
Yes.
We were going to see the Marine base was at Camp Pendleton.
Yes.
We were going to carry the Marines. We were going to go down the Pacific. Other military support was coming from the Atlantic side.
Correct. Yes.
So we were involved with loading up for the invasion of Cuba. And there's no sense going into a lot of details, that's past stuff, but it was nonetheless, say, exciting.
Yes, that's an understatement.
But it was also, you know, but we thank the Lord to this day that Mr. JFK, our president, called Khrushchev's bluff.
Yes.
And of course, I don't know if people remember the details, but the problem was what was happening in Cuba was that the Russians were installing missile sites on the island.
Yes.
But JFK called Khrushchev's bluff and forced them to get those silos out of there, get them out. That doesn't mean we didn't have some harassment problems later with Cuba, but we didn't have the threat of an invasion.
Right.
Stopped it.
Good. Yes.
And we were ready. We were ready to invade Cuba. We would, and I tell you what, the Marines that were going to be the ones that got to see just a few, they wanted to go to Cuba and kick Fidel's butt.
Yes.
They were excited.
Yes.
And when it was called off, oh no, we want to go. But you know, I look back on that active duty and I'm just blessed to have had an opportunity
Yes.
to see how the military can respond to a problem, and it makes you feel good.
Good.
Makes you feel good.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I had nothing in my military career that I was negative about. Nothing.
Good.
Everything was positive.
Oh,
I all the leadership I was around on active duty, it was the best you could have.
excellent.
Yes, it was the best you could have. One of the best bosses I had
Mm-hmm.
when I was at Flotilla 1 was a lieutenant commander. When I was a lieutenant, he was the operations boss, and I was communication. I reported to him.
Okay.
He was African American.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, there was still some racial in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there were some racial issues. He was a tremendous man. Tremendous. He was one of the greatest bosses I've ever had.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was making the Navy a career. So I didn't keep up with him later, but I'm sure he went on. Yeah. It was good to see that in the military. It was good to see that.
Yes.
To see
Yes.
them in a officer position and doing well. It was good. Yeah.
Great.
It was really good. And the rest of active duty after the Cuban deal,
Mm-hmm.
it was pretty quiet.
Okay. And
Pretty
you were
quiet.
still in San Diego. That's where you were living
Yeah.
and working.
Yeah. Yeah, I really actually stayed in Long Beach the the early month when I was going to school and stuff. I was in Long Beach, but that was not permanent. I was in San Diego
Okay.
and stayed there, yeah, until 1964, May 28th, 1964. And when I went to, there's one little detail I probably left out, but when I was graduating from Tech in
Mm-hmm.
'60,
Mm-hmm.
I was a petroleum engineer.
Okay.
The oil business has been, in its entire life, has been up and down,
Yes.
up and down. And when I got my degree in '60, went into the military because I had the obligation anyway. When I got out, the best job I could get as a petroleum engineer then was driving a Halliburton truck. Yes, that's there wasn't no jobs. The
Oh,
oil business was down,
wow.
and I talked and one of the people I talked to about going in the military even said, "Go get it over with. 4 years." Said the oil business will be back up top. It exactly happened. I had 9 job offers in May of '64. 9 job offers as a petroleum engineer. Humble Oil Company, Shell Oil Company, Conoco uh, had the pick,
Good for you.
and
That's
I picked.
timing.
Yeah,
That's good
that was
timing.
it was just
Right. Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was good too because I had another one on the way, another kid on the way. So,
Oh.
but anyway, yeah, that was
So you so you you decided to leave to terminate then at the end of your obligation, correct? And
I decided to terminate. Well,
or
not terminate my life with the Navy, but terminate active duty.
okay.
They tried to ask. They really wanted me to stay,
Okay.
but the petroleum industry was looking good, and also Vietnam was getting heavier. And think, in the Navy wasn't that much involved directly. There was his support groups, yes, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but I made the decision I want to stay in the Navy Reserve. I like the Navy; they've been good to me and everything. And I saw opportunity in the Navy Reserve,
Oh, good. Okay.
and it also was an insurance policy.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about it, with oil companies, is that job gonna be staying good? If I stay active in the Navy Reserve, there's lots of benefits. Stay so, and I wouldn't lose any seniority or nothing.
Right.
So if something happened, I could go back in the military.
Yes, sir.
So it was a best of all things, and so I stayed in the reserve, and and then boy, was that a right decision? I mean, you know, even in the reserve, we had lots of benefits
Mm-hmm.
that people don't have. And anyway,
Did you deploy at all when you were in the reserves?
when I was in the reserves, I did some. Yeah, I have. In fact, 4 years later, I like to stay. We had 2 weeks. We had to do 2 weeks of active duty
Yes.
every year,
Correct. Mm-hmm.
and I always wanted to go aboard ships, and I did shipboard training because I was already a qualified officer of the deck,
Yes.
and so one of the 4 years later, in one of my jobs, which was great, I was a ship driver. In my summer training
Mm-hmm.
uh, was to go to New Orleans and get aboard a destroyer.
Oh, okay.
And I was a shipboard earlier, but we want you to go to the destroyer for 2 weeks training, and you're going to go to Cuba, Gitmo. It's a Navy base. Then you're going to have some assignments there. I said, okay. What? So on the way to Cuba, the first 3 days out, and that's all it took to get there, was training for me. They upgraded me to be another OOD of a destroyer.
I was getting ready to ask if there was different qualifications for
Yeah,
different
yeah.
ships.
I had some of the basics,
Mm-hmm.
but as far as navigation and stuff
Mm-hmm.
and everything, but
Sure.
I had to learn more about the destroyer I was on. So after 3 days, I was qualified, and I stood watch.
Good.
And we did 10 days at sea,
Mm-hmm.
and then we got an opportunity to observe what was going on in Cuba.
Yes.
They had these. I mean, there wasn't any more danger of a communist invasion, nothing like that.
Mm-hmm.
But Castro had these fishing boats that were out equipped with fancy electronics. Here you'd see this fishing boat, and there'd be a bunch of Cubans on it, and you see these electronic antennas going up and stuff, and oh,
They were fishing for something other than fish.
and they go along. They were out, off the coast of Florida, eavesdropping,
Yes.
eavesdropping,
Exactly.
and we had some interesting times uh, out there.
Did you confront them?
No, well, we didn't confront them, but some of the waves of the ocean did.
Oh.
Yeah, one way to really cause waves in the ocean is to circle.
Oh, yes.
Anyway, we took pictures of them. This was part of the orders: take pictures of them and send them to Washington. Yeah, but yeah, we had a lot of fun with them.
I can imagine. I
Yeah.
can only imagine.
I didn't understand Spanish, but boy, they sure did holler. But that was one of my most exciting. I've had a lot of good reserve time, a lot of wonderful reserve time. But as far as one of the most exciting was that trip to down there, and then later on, I guess I had a lot of good 2 week training deals,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I was I was very fortunate in my reserve of 16 years.
Uh-huh.
I was the captain, the CEO of a Navy Reserve Center 5 times.
Oh, congrats. Good.
Yeah, and that felt me good.
You bet.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that, and the also the later part of my Navy Reserve.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I had them in Texas. I was in Louisiana, Wyoming.
Oh,
I got to work for the Naval Academy,
okay. Good.
and lots of good things. And it was just it went along with my career. I worked for Conoco.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, in those days. Now it's ConocoPhillips now, but it was Conoco.
Okay.
I spent 31 years with them,
Mm.
retired. In all that time, I worked in 9 different locations in the United States with Conoco, and they supported me 100% to go to my Navy Reserve training.
Well, it's a law. They have to. I mean, it's nice that they did, but it's actually a law. They
It
had
was,
to.
yeah,
Yeah.
I hope
So,
that same
It's a good
feeling
law.
is today. I don't
It's a
know.
good law. Trust me, it's a good law.
Yeah, it was. Conoco was 100%.
That's great.
Every boss I had
That's great.
was. I think it actually, if you want to be honest about it, I've told other people. I really think that the Navy training helped me with my professional career. I think the combination of the two, because I advanced with Conoco, started off as a basic engineer and went all the way up into management,
Good.
different locations,
Mm-hmm.
and everywhere I was associated with the Navy,
Mm-hmm.
the Navy Reserve. And it was just a marriage, a
That's
good marriage.
wonderful. Well, you deserve the respect, and you got it.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I'm just so pleased that, yeah. And I had family support and everything. It was, yeah.
That's wonderful.
And now I have all the benefits of retirement. I mean, it's I've been getting that monthly check for a long time,
So
and
your total service time was how much? 20?
20 years.
20 years. Excellent.
Yeah,
Thank you.
20 years.
Yes.
I get the retirement check every month. I have special uh, medical benefits.
Yes, you do. Indeed.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, special medical. The wife and I now very rarely do we have to pay any kind of medical bill. And
That's
we've had
great.
surgeries, we've had everything. But the United States Navy, and I just,
That's a big deal nowadays. That is a huge
oh
deal.
man, is it ever?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I was talking to my daughter the other day. She's a retired school teacher, and she's got a $900 a month,
Right. Right.
hospitalization.
Yes.
Good gosh.
Right. Right.
Uh, anyway,
Yes.
I can't say enough about my military career,
That's
my military life.
That's so good to hear. Now, do you stay in touch with any of the people that you might have met or any organizations that you're still active with or anything?
I'm still active in a lot of business organizations.
Yes.
Yeah, oh
Okay.
yeah. But yeah,
Good.
yeah, it's
Good.
but I was a busy man.
Yes, indeed. It sounds
I
like
mean,
it.
there was if you stop think about it, the to be to retire in the reserve program, you're obligating yourself to monthly or weekly meetings
Mm-hmm.
and 2 weeks training every summer.
Yes, sir.
And that's pretty difficult nowadays in the professional world. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it was a blessing.
Good. Good. Is there anything else you want to add as we kind of come to a close here? But is there anything else that you would like to add?
God's been good to me.
Hey, good to hear.
Yeah,
Good to hear.
yeah, I've been blessed with a good family.
Yes.
Yes, I've been just blessed.
Great.
Yeah, and I'm a patriot to the heart,
Yeah.
man.
You sound like you've got a good attitude about everything anyway.
Yeah, I've
That's
got a good attitude. I love talking about it.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate, I tell you what, we so appreciate and thank you for your service to our United States of America and for everything that you did on our behalf to keep us safe, to keep us protected. So we thank you for that.
Well, I thank you for listening to me, and I thank you for the program you're supporting. That's wonderful.
Yes, thank you.